I'm Chris Anderson, cartoonist, writer, storyboard artist. My work can be found in the pages of Creepshow, Heavy Metal, my co-creations Lost Angels, Spectral, A Showcase of Fear, and Chaotic Neutral, as well as my upcoming books Something Seems Off, Three-Headed Pigman, which is going to be serialized in my Patreon. And today I'll be talking to writer-artists Tony Fleecs and Tim Seeley about their Image Comics book, Local Man. Welcome to Chris Anderson Comics. All right, everybody. Today I have some very special guests. My friends Tony Fleecs and Tim Seeley. How are you guys doing?
This is like the film show.
I've never used that. Guess it works.
Maybe.
How are you guys doing?
We're doing good.
Awesome.
I haven't seen Tim in literal weeks. I think we've been on like what seems like a short break, but we're getting back into it. We're working on issue 10 right now of Local Man. We just finished up the second trade and the Bad Girl special, so we had like 1 month break to sort of try and get caught up, and I think I'm just about to the point where I squandered it. Tim's doing good.
Yeah.
Tim's always doing things. He's on top of things.
Yeah, on top of the 50 other projects that you guys are doing too. So
we stay busy. Yeah.
It's just kind of how it goes. So I wanted to have you guys on to talk about Local Man. So I was just telling you guys off camera that, I read the first couple issues and I loved it, but now I got a chance to read the first trade and I just need more. So luckily there is more coming. So the second trade's just about to drop, right?
Yeah.
April, right?
Yeah, FOC's on March 4th. Yeah, on next Monday. And then it'll come out, I guess, a month after that. By the way, let me just, before we jump into this, everything in my whole life, FOC is on March 4th. Local Man Volume 2, Local Man, The Bad Girls One Shot, which is a good, if you've read Volume 2 and you want something to, if you haven't read anything and you want something to to wet your whistle before you jump into this book, check out Local Man, Bad Girls. And then also Feral, which is my follow-up to Stray Dogs with Trish Forstner and Tone Rodriguez and Brad Simpson, the whole team from Stray Dogs. And then 2 weeks after that, Uncanny Valley's on FOC from Boom, and that's me and Dave Wachter. So yeah, I have a shit ton coming out. I like to say it at the beginning because anytime I do one of these podcasts, I get to the end and then I'm like, oh, we should have but then I feel like we could have bored people by then. So before we start boring,
that's true.
Let me do a little bit of boring shit and then we'll jump into it.
Yeah, I always have a hard time figuring out. I used to put all my shit at the end of this too, and now I've just in the last couple videos I've started being like, oh, by the way, I'm an artist writer, and these are the books that I've done, just in case you don't know who the hell I am.
Yeah,
you're just on here to see guests or whatever. But what about you, Tim? You got other stuff coming out? I know you
do. I can't remember. Oh yeah, Deathstalker. That's coming out. The vault book. Yeah, and then and Local Man Bad Girls is the one I'm trying to get people to buy because I'm really, really proud of that one, and I really want to make sure people check it out because we drew the shit out of that book for reasons we didn't even need to do. So
we keep really going hard on this book, and I think it's just for the three of us and Alex Chung.
Dude, I swear to God, you guys wrote this book for me. I read it and I was like, this is me. This book is for me. How the fuck did you know?
It does too. It's like that part in E.T. when he says he came to me too. This is also us.
But I think all I know now, and I think Tony and I've talked about, is like when I started comics, I made a slasher comics that looked like a Zenescope book, but read like something much more sincere and serious. And if I do the thing I like, I believe sooner or later people will figure it out. Because at the time, like backslash was a weird thing to do. And now it's just, it's, sort of just a standard accepted sort of thing. So someday that'll be Local Man as well. It'll be like, yeah, of course. It's just you do '90s weird superhero stuff and treat it like a Vertigo comic, and then put your own fears about divorce and stuff in there. People will love it. That's just how it works.
You're just an innovator, Tim. You're ahead of the curve.
Yeah, which is useless.
Yeah, totally, exactly. Yeah, you'll be famous when you're dead. It's all good.
I'm waiting.
Yep. Aren't we all? Sweet fame. It looks like it froze on you, Tim, in a perfect point when you're like at mid sip.
I'm moving.
No, but it's a good shot. So
all right,
as long as we can hear you.
Hear me, I guess it don't matter.
Exactly. So how did you guys, like, I don't know the story of how you guys got together to come up with this book. Did you run into each other or just start emailing, or like how did you guys get together on this? Tim, you live in Chicago.
Yep. So he's in LA.
You're down the street from me, figuratively speaking. So like how did you come together on this?
Yeah. Well, so Tony and I have known each other for a long time because we know the same people, mostly Burnham, and then the LA crew that's my friends is Brendan Hay and Chris Tabor, mixed with the crew that is Tony's friends like Moreno and Tone and stuff. So we had a bunch of the same friends, even though like I went to high school with Tabor and I interned at Marvel with Brendan Hay, it somehow became the same crew. So we knew each other. But the basic one is we went to Long Beach Comic-Con in 2019. And that January of 2019. And there was rumblings that there was some kind of cold going around. But we were at that show and we all went and got dinner at Roscoe's, chicken and waffles. And Tony and I share, and whenever we meet up, we always talk about this very specific era of Image books, and then the books that ripped off the Image books. So that would be like Eternity books and Hall of Heroes and all that kind of stuff, which were of lower quality than the Image books, generally speaking, but they were full of energy. They were, and they were mostly made by people probably at the time were only a year or two older than Tony and I, probably.
Right.
But so then we were talking about those things like we always do. And I believe the thing that we came upon would be, wouldn't it be great if there was a comic that looked like a 90s Image comic, but read like a 90s Vertigo comic? And I was like, I have an idea, actually, but I didn't have it all figured out. And it was the nugget of Local Man, I think. And then we went home and everyone got stuck in the house for a year. And so Tony and we just emailed it back and forth and hopped on Zooms and shit. So like the majority of the lockdown, Tony and I were working on Local Man. I think we had the entire backup done and the first 5 pages done like 2 years before the book came out, I believe, a year and a half.
Maybe. Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, that was the pitch. We made some small changes to it when it finally came out. But the first 5 pages of my side, and then I think it was like maybe 5 pages of your side because the backup in one is longer. But yeah, that was all done like at the beginning of the pandemic, basically. We had pitched it before Stray Dogs finished, I think, when that was coming out. Yeah, we just kicked it back and forth, and it sort of developed and took shape, and we sort of like started figuring out how to work, like how we would work together,
Yeah.
And it evolved from being like, is it something that's going to look like? Pretty quickly, we realized like, I told Tim I had this style that I was tinkering with that was like a photo reference style that was nothing like the way I draw ponies or Wars or anything.
Yeah.
And so I was like, we could do this. And then we've decided we wanted to do the whole thing as a flip book, like Youngblood and Brigade used to be.
Yeah.
And so it just sort of like organically took shape when we started like talking about what we liked and like trying to point at things in those comics that we liked and that were similar about all of them, and that we could sort of like build our third gen universe, like our superhero universe around these things that like, Youngblood was all famous people and they were built out. It was a team of people that were supposed to be like, celebrities. But then everybody in Image Comics was like somehow cyber, here and there.
Yeah.
Everybody has cable arms.
Yeah.
And I told him I have this theory that like every team is like a girl that has laser powers and a giant guy and there's like a knife guy, like a knife hands guy, and you know, like so we just sort of like started figuring out all those things and putting it together, and then but really what we were doing was setting ourselves up to tell this story about this guy that is just sort of at rock bottom, and nothing went how he thought it was going to go, and can we tell a story about that person and make it as fun as if we were telling a story about the superheroes on the other side?
Yeah, that's really and that formula just, I don't know, it works so well for this thing. So basically, Tim, you kind of draw the flashback sequences, right, with the with the team in the 90s, and then Tony, you draw like the what's happening now.
Yeah, and a lot of times we'll cross over to where, like, if he starts to feel particularly heroic, Tim will draw those parts, or if he has flashbacks, Tim will draw those parts. So we do the whole thing digitally on Procreate, and we work on basically entirely on Dropbox. So we're just sort of like, we can share stuff back and forth much easier than they could share stuff back and forth, in like Image United days, or whatever, back when they would mail covers around for the other guy to ink. Like we can just instantly pass stuff around, and sort of made it
welcome to the future.
And that's one of the things we talked about when we started this, is how bummed we were about Image United not working out, and it never got finished, and like how mad we were about it, kind of. But then we're like, well, let's see if we can do something where we do what they were doing, where different artists on the same page. And that was one of our inspirations, in part to be like, we love that book, and also fuck that book for never getting done. I think when by the time you get to Local Man Gold, you see like we've perfected the drawing on the same pages thing. And by the time we get to we did it sort of different in Bad Girls. It's actually different pages. It's very rarely the same artist on the same page. I think a couple times it is, but we've really kind of figured out a way to make that integrated, which I think at first posed a challenge, and maybe it wasn't going to work, but now we kind of got to where it's almost like a shtick. Like in the second volume, when Local Man literally moves around the pages, like now it's like a thing we do. That we just different pages.
Yeah, the part of it that's, I guess, that's mostly us and is not the 90s about this is the formal stuff, that we're sort of like playing with pages and with the form of comics more than maybe they were back then.
Oh, you definitely are. You're 1,000%. That, and just the fact that there's an actual story under all of this. It's like that 90s stuff famously, like I can't remember a single storyline from any of the early 90s stuff, and I read those things rapidly.
Dragon and Spawn really hold up. Now that I look back through them, and Tony and I talked about this, like those are books that had more of a direction, and they had more of a voice, and it's parts of Wildcats is really impressive, but like the rest of the stuff is very much like, they were like, here's a title, and then they kind of winged it for a while, and then the main creator usually lost interest and hired someone else to come back in and fix it, and you could just feel it. Like it keeps the energy to some degree up, because you never know what the fuck is happening, but
neither did they.
There's no sort of structural integrity.
Well, and like Silvestri sort of found himself later, like he was already up to that speed working on X-Men and Wolverine, and so Cyberforce I feel like is just sort of more that direction, but it's not it's not like groundbreaking or anything. But then he gets to like Darkness, he gets to Witchblade, like that's when Silvestri sort of had his like Image revolution or whatever.
And Cyberforce, I love Cyberforce, but we read Cyberforce, you're like, even Mark is kind of, and I hung out with him and he said this much, where he was just like, making fun of X-Men basically. So there was a character named Warbuck who's like a cybernetic deer, which I thought was fucking great. He's like, that is the point at which I lost control of Cyberforce, but I'm like, that's the part where I was like all in, like Warbuck, bro. But
oh my god,
Yeah, but like, yeah, I agree with Tony's. Like, I think Mark figured out more what he was into later. You know, I think he knew what he was
Right.
known for before that, but then he found out what he was into. But
Yeah.
like Dragon and Spawn are kind of incredible. The first 25 issues of both those books
Yeah.
are textbooks, I think, now, you know.
Yeah, they knew what they were right off.
Dragon is still a treat.
Yeah.
Talk about a book you don't know where it's going to go.
Yeah, man. I mean, I have a guess at one place that it's usually going to go.
Yeah. So just kind of do a little flip through of, you know, sort of the first chapter, the first issue of this. And you started out with this, you know, kind of character. You already set it up, you know, with your establishing shot that he's in the middle of nowhere, you know, at a bus, you know, at an empty bus stop that the bus ain't even coming. And so this is clearly like the Midwest heartland. We find out later this is Wisconsin. And Tim, you're from Wisconsin, right?
I am indeed from Wisconsin.
Yeah.
This is
yeah.
The fictional area in Wisconsin, and after Tony drew it, I determined that it was in Southwest Wisconsin.
That's right.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I'm from Minnesota, so I definitely felt this.
Yeah. Well,
you know.
So these pages too, you know, the first issue script didn't have this scene in it. I sort of wrote a first draft and was still kind of figuring out what it was. And then Tony went in and just like cut it all up and then added a scene. He spent 4 pages on a bus stop or a guy walking, and I was like, oh man, I would never do this. But it's important because this sets a tone.
Right, exactly.
He's like, Tony's much better at relying on the images than I am. I for some reason don't really trust readers most of the time. So like, I wouldn't have done this. But then Tony did it, and now I know we can do it in this book. We can take our time in spots, which, you know, I just was sort of like, oh man, people are paying money for these pages, and it's just a bus stop, man. Like, you got to have somebody punch somebody in the face and a half-naked girl bending over somewhere in here, you know? So.
Yeah. well, that's the flip part of it, right? But also, you know, it does set the tone. It sets the tone that this is, you know, as I'm sure you well know, this is sort of exactly what it's like to live in a small town in the Midwest. It's just, you know, not much going on.
Well, there's a thing I've been spoiled by too, and this is when I decided this was the right thing to do when Tony drew this up was, you know, I've lived in Chicago for 3 years or something, but I grew up in a place like this. Sometimes I'll get sent to some Comic-Con, you know, like maybe like somewhere in Missouri or like, you know, Colorado or Denver area, but not you know, in Colorado or Denver. I mean,
yeah.
And then there's no sidewalk. There's no sidewalk, which is, you want to go somewhere, you're like, where the fuck do I go? There's no sidewalk. There's no, which I think is the weirdest thing, because here you can walk. That's how I know where to go. And so this thing where he's from LA, he's been in LA for 20 years. Like he'd come out to here and be like, what is this? Like, this is like, he'd forget, like I do. Every time I go back to Wisconsin, I forget. There's no sidewalk.
Yep.
There's nowhere to go. You either get in a car and you go to Walmart, or you don't go anywhere. Like, that's the, you know, and that's why this, I think, when I was like, yeah, this feels right. Like, this is a place that you can't get around unless someone picks you up on a pickup.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I used to summer like it was like it was Cape Cod, but in Nebraska, at my grandparents' house, and it would be similar. This scene felt like that to me, where I would just sort of get cut loose to wander around, and nobody would say anything to me, and I would just be like completely isolated in the middle, you know, like in these big wide open spaces, you know. I would just, you know, walk down into town, you know, and so I would just be, you know, wandering and like next to a field for what seemed like hours. That's sort of what this was.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. It probably was hours.
Yeah, it may well have been hours.
So we're introduced to this character. We find out that this is his hometown, but he is from a super group called Third Gen, right? Or Fourth Gen? Which one is it?
Third Gen is the first team.
Third Gen is it. Okay. And so he's like, and his name is Crossjack in the group. And he is sort of like so this was a great twist. So he's like, every super team has like an archer, right? But this is, and he figures out the potential of an object that he holds. So anything that he throws, he knows exactly how to get it there, except for he's terrible at archery, right?
Yeah.
That's the one thing that he can't do.
Can't be shot. That's the twist. Yeah, because he's
Yeah.
terrible at bow. Which the whole bow thing comes from my personal experience. I grew up shooting bow and arrow as a kid, so and I have guilt about it because my dad would always want to take me hunting, and I don't like killing stuff. So
Right.
but I'm really good with a bow. I can shoot a bow pretty good.
That's great.
I did for years, but so I put this that character. I put that in Jack. He's the shaft or green arrow who's bad with a bow because he doesn't like killing stuff.
Yeah.
And I love that this town has one like Lyft driver.
Yeah.
And and it's this guy, and he hates him, so he's got to just walk it.
Yeah.
That's also a real thing. I went back to visit my parents maybe 5 years ago. We went to there was like a little like restaurant bar thing with the arcade, and I was hanging out there with my family. And then we were to go to different places, but we went in separate cars. I didn't have my car with me, so I called an Uber, and the Uber took 45 minutes to get there. And the lady showed up, and she had driven from Green Bay, which is she was like, "Oh, I was on the way." She's on the way, a place an hour and a half away, and that was like the only Uber drivers were there, like doing the track between an hour and a half to pick us up. So I was like, yeah, that is so realistic. That in my house, I can call an Uber driver, and there's guaranteed someone within 2 minutes for sure. But yeah.
Yeah, I absolutely get that. I would take Lyfts and Ubers, everywhere. And then the same thing happened to me when I went to go and visit my mom. I wanted to go. We're only like, I don't know, 10 miles outside of the Twin Cities, maybe. But in order to get somebody to pick me up, I had to wait until they were driving down. Someone was driving down the freeway, coming back from like dropping somebody off in Wisconsin, going back into the Twin Cities, because there were just no drivers around. So you had to wait until one showed up and just keep refreshing the app. It's changed now a bit, but yeah. I feel that.
You take it for granted when you. I'm from a town smaller than where Jack is from, but still, like, I've lived here so long, I'm ruined. I just think that city liberal elite who just takes everything for granted.
Yeah. And you're introduced to his parents here, who, what is it, like 8:30 at night when he finally makes it to his parents' house, and they're pissed because like they ate already. Like it's 8:30 is way too late to eat.
Yeah, my grandparents used to eat at like 4 p.m.
Yeah.
And of course, it's called supper. Dinner's at lunchtime, and then supper's at like 4:30.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's just like a Midwest thing too, because anytime you get together with people, it's like, oh, we're eating at 3:00. What?
Well, yeah, because my grandpa would wake up at like 4 to go farm.
Yeah.
His whole shit was off.
Right. Yeah. And then you're introduced to the old dog too, Pepper, which was actually my dog when I was a kid. His name was Pepper and looked exactly like that.
What?
Yes.
Is this an homage to you, Chris? I don't remember.
I really think it is. It was tripping me out when I was reading it.
Pepper. So we had to put a dog in here because Tony was one that said we should put a dog in here because I've had
dogs sell comics. Tony knows.
Yeah. That's what I thought,
yeah. We were trying to figure out, like, when we originally talked about it, I was like, well, if he's been gone for 20 years, like, that dog would be anxious. And then he's got to be, the dog is, like, shouldn't be alive, like this dog.
Right.
And then that's kind of the joke. But the original thing that with the dog, too, was I thought it would be great for, like the thing I learned with Hack Slash is give your characters super distinct visual things that if anybody draws them or if anybody dressed cosplays as them, it's them. So the orange mask and the dog, I felt, and then the like golf bag full of stuff. That would be like the visual cues. Like no matter who drew it, if it was me or Tony or fucking Raphael Grandpa, it wouldn't matter. It would still look like him because he would have those items. So the dog was a visual cue.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So if somebody's walking around with their dog in an orange mask, you know that they're cosplaying him, right?
That's local man.
Yeah.
Right. So is this the first time? So up to this point, I think, Tony, you were drawing the pages, right? And then this is the first time that you see. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
It's hard to tell. You guys kind of like, you really figured out how to do it.
Well,
Seems like you said you didn't. You said you didn't get it until later in the series, but I think you nailed it right off the bat.
Well, yeah. So this one was. So I drew this page. I laid it out, and then Tim had already drawn in the backup story. There's a shot that's almost exactly the same as this. So I just took that shot that he'd already drawn and blew it up in there. And then I moved it around a little bit, and then I just said, "Draw this better," and sent it back to him. And
yeah,
okay. It was like a real small shot in the backup, so we knew we wanted it to be like a moment.
Yeah,
I see.
It's the first time what I like about how we ended up doing this is that color-wise and everything, it's really different. So it's like his life. Mm-hmm. It's the first time you realize his life in third gen, around a bunch of spandex colored or wearing people with weird, 90s costumes, like looks drastically different than his sort of, beige and gray and stuff life back in Farmington.
Yeah. And Brad
Simpson.
Brad Simpson, colored this, right?
Yeah. Felipe Sobrero colors the backup stories. So he usually colors all the superhero stuff, but Brad colored this one. He colors the Farmington sides.
Gotcha. Great touch with the back glow too, to drive home the fact that it's a flashback.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, and I see that you also it kind of indicated with the panel border, huh?
Yeah.
As you go, like hand drawn here and.
See, we're always
great
thinking.
Touch.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
Tell you without telling you.
Exactly.
Somebody pointed out that when Jack, like in that last panel where the word balloon is way over Jack's head, they thought that I was lettering so intuitively that I put him small in the panel and had the letters always be over his head because he didn't know what was going on. Everything was over his head. As he started to get more confident, the letters, he sort of comes even with the letters. And I was like, that's exactly what I was doing. Correct.
Yes, absolutely.
Of course. I'm always thinking of everything.
I knew it all.
Please always just read genius into whatever I do, right?
Yeah. So this is an actual bar in Weston, Wisconsin, right here, that Tony redrew. It is, in fact, a barn bar off Highway 29 and J in my hometown. So
I love it.
I always love that there was this bar that they just took a barn and turned it into a bar. That's the most Wisconsin shit ever.
I like amalgamated it with my local bar when I lived in South Dakota. So like those windows in that door and the Pabst sign are the Top Hat in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. But everything else, I smashed everything together.
And this is really awesome. You get to see Jack use his powers. I like this scene a lot because he's playing darts by himself, and he just sticks them all in the. It's like you start to realize that Jack he's kind of a douchebag. Like the playing darts by yourself and using your superpowers to just stick them all in the bullseye is like he's a good guy, but he's also sort of a show off, and he's also he just wants attention, kind of, and obviously kind of becomes his problem throughout his entire life. And you sort of see it right here. Like that's the treatise. He's the kind of guy who has this skill and he's used it to get himself attention. But, in the end, he keeps sort of doing the right thing because that's probably what he's really about in the end. But you get to see that kind of play out in this shot too.
Also,
plus everybody hates him, right?
Yeah.
That's what I think he's trying to figure out. Like so far, the Uber driver seems to not like him and his parents seem pretty pissed at him. But he's like, well, I'm the chosen son of this town. Let me just go out amongst my people and sort of do some cross-jack shit, and they should come a running.
Yeah, people will love.
Yeah.
But he's also like the fallen, chosen one of the town because he's let everybody down with his moral ambiguity, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think the thing that they're all pissed at him, and it takes him a while to figure this one out, is he always thinks, obviously it's the whole thing that he got kicked out and shit, but it's because that when he kind of promised this town jobs, and the promise of him was that he would bring something, and that Fourth Gen Institute and all that stuff would be this thing the town needed, and then that stuff never materialized because he wasn't involved in it. So everybody's just sort of, they've internalized this long sort of, our town could have been built up, we could have had jobs, and we've got nothing. So there's always this kind of anger at him about that.
Yeah, it's like somebody that succeeds, and you're like, we're succeeding, and then they're like, well, I'm succeeding.
Yeah, yeah, right.
Yeah, yeah.
Perfect.
I love how you frame this shot with his arm up really like nice. That, with her walking in. It was really, and sticking her right in the middle. That's a really great shot, man.
Thanks. This one, panel 3, I realized I should have had him with his back turned. I feel like I don't know why, because obviously, like he would see her when she walked in there. Like it's supposed to be, or no, he should turn away to like hide himself. While he's Googling her.
And Inga's an interesting one because when we were designing her, I kind of liked the idea, and the original design of her, you can see it in the trade. Like she was like a heavy set blonde lady. Like she was like she looked like a Wisconsin lady.
Yeah.
And I thought that would be a nice touch, was that she was like the hot teenage girlfriend, but she's 40 some years old, and I thought she could be a big curvy smiley laughing ant lady, and then it would even be sort of more shocking later when you found out the truth about her. But then Tony drew her, he just drew that. And I was
I feel like I forgot there was even a design of her. And like I said, I did this all with photo reference, so I just cast somebody that I knew. It's my real estate agent. And so it's just like, yeah, this is what she looks like.
Yeah.
I mean, I agree though. I think it would have been fun to do original Inga, and again, it would have been like a definitely a more specific to the Midwest tone. But this woman is from Sioux Falls, South Dakota, also, so she's at least regional.
Yeah,
right.
It ended up growing on me a lot, but the original idea was different. And
this is when Tim started to realize I would just do whatever the fuck. He was just like, I don't think this guy's listening.
Well,
I love it.
But when you find out about her in the later issues, and she was big, cheery, and the sex scenes and stuff, it would have been surprising to people. I think. Yeah. But there we go. But Hodag does. He is as we intended to be.
Right.
A goofy sort of 1960s kind of Marvel superhero, given the 90s image filter, but then it fucked him up for life.
Yeah, I mean, it's the Cable forearms definitely put him in the 90s, but yeah, the rest of him is sort of like a Spider-Man villain. It's really, really great design.
Are you familiar, Chris, with what the Hodag is? You're from Minnesota.
I don't know what the Hodag is.
So this is disappointing. But the Hodag, there's a town in Wisconsin called Rhinelander, and Rhinelander is it's a medium-sized town, not huge, but it's a nice town. But long, long ago, they used to have this like a society essentially, and that was like like the sort of whatever the elites kind of the town. But they set up this whole lie and created a taxidermy form of this thing called the Hodag, which they took a bear, and they took what else did they all use? A bunch of shit, and they made this creature, and they said that they had found it there. It was like all this big hubbub. This is like 1890 something, or whatever.
Uh-huh.
But it remained like the biggest sort of story in Rhinelander, and to this day, there's a huge statue of the Hodag, and they have a Hodag fest, and they have all this shit in Rhinelander.
Really?
So
it's like a jackalope that turned into a cryptid thing.
Yeah. Uh-huh. So I thought a Wisconsin villain would definitely be called the Hodag.
Oh yeah. So this wasn't this was a creation specifically for the book, right?
I did have a Hodag character when I was a kid. He didn't look like this though. He looked more like a monster.
Oh man.
So this was sort of taking them back ideas I had as a kid and turning them more into something that would fit our story, because the thing we wanted him to be was that he, Jack had kind of outgrown him. Like, he was Jack's big enemy, and they used to fight all around town, and he would go on rampages down Main Street and knock over mailboxes or whatever. And then Jack would fight him, and then he left, and Hodag was like, just another sort of leftover person in Jack's life. And then he, obviously we see in the flashback, he tries to join Jack, and that goes very badly for him.
Right.
And this is that thing that in the middle panel there, you see where we do the where it switches, it becomes more, Liefeldy, or
right,
when he feels heroic. So he gets his Jack's back moment.
Right. So did you draw this then, or?
Yes.
Okay.
I think we might have drawn that hand in the foreground though too. This thing is
this one here,
real puzzle piece. Well, that one definitely, but in the Hodag hand in panel 2, I think I drew also.
Oh, okay. Yeah, but we're playing around with this ideas of just he feels different when he feels like how he used to when he was a hero, that he would sort of look, and this kind of messing around with, can you make someone as the reader feel something differently if it's drawn differently?
Many people have pointed out that there's no way you could be holding on to that trash can lid the way we drew it.
Yeah, that's true. He's just balancing it there.
Yeah, you could just tuck your whatever. Who gives a shit?
Is he just going like this with his hand?
Well, also it's just he's magnetic, but we don't ever talk about that.
Well, it's also drawn like by a '90s artist.
To
so
tin.
He would turn around and his weapons would be gone, and whatever. It doesn't matter. So
I'm sure we've done that. I definitely think I've done that.
Oh, for sure.
There's been books where, like you were talking about the image crossover books and stuff, where, a book here and there where writers came together and worked on it. Has there ever been a full series that you guys can think of?
The only one I can think of that's even close is Promethea, but that was one guy doing different styles.
Right.
Which J.H. Williams did that. And that was an influence on this book for sure. That sort of idea of when people are in different eras and when they remember things differently, it becomes a different visual. But I don't think I couldn't think of one offhand, mostly because no one ever does a book where both people are writer or artist.
Right, exactly. Doesn't happen often.
Because it's a bad idea.
Well, or it's one person's bringing their property in, the other person's bringing their property in that they've worked on, and then it's crossing over. But this is like the first time that I think that anybody's developed something together that are both, writer artists. Maybe it's a bad idea, but the thing is you say that, you joke about that, but I think it's working beyond well in this thing.
Yeah. Well,
and
a big inspiration for us was and for me personally, the Don Simpson, Eric Larson,
Savage Dragon, Megaton Man,
which they did that. They did they split it back and forth. It's just when I was a kid, I loved that book so much. I must have read that one a million times, and part of it was just how much energy it had by seeing them like living in just these different worlds, and them, and then just the fun of trying to figure out, like, they would punch each other and Eric would have to lay it out, or Don would have to lay it out and stuff. So, but yeah, it's been done certainly, but not very often. And I joke, but I mean, the reason you don't usually have writer artists do it is partly because if you're doing this, you should just do the whole book yourself. But we're crazy, and and this is more fun than doing it by ourselves. So I'd rather do it this way.
Exactly. And if it's fun for you, it's going to be fun for whoever's reading it. It just tends to be the case.
Yeah. Yeah. Jack just gets his ass thrown out of the bar.
Right. And so he kind of reconnects with this girl that was his girlfriend, right? Or
high school girlfriend.
When he left town. Mm-hmm.
It's also, so I had already drawn issue 2 backup stories by the time Tony drew by the time Tony finished this stuff. So I had made Inga sort of based on my high school girlfriend, Susie. Susie had this wonderful big blonde 90s haircut. She had like the huge bangs and and then And so I'd already drawn it, and then I got these pages back, and she had black hair, and I was like, God damn it! So I had to go through and change color her hair black in the flashbacks, but I kept the big ass hair, and that became a sort of story point for Inga, is that she was like, because if you're from a small town in the Midwest, you know this, like 80s, 90s fashions held on until like the 2010s. Like,
yes, they did.
Big hair did not go away in my hometown until like 2015. And it might even, some might have hung on later than that. It was like, and part of I've always had the theory that sometimes like when you were like the thing that generated that fashion, you just didn't want to let it go. Like, and so big hair came from, rural Wisconsin. And so they're like, we're going to keep this forever. But she got rid of it earlier.
Yeah, it's like the spiky soccer mom haircut that's still very prevalent. And then, yeah. So we find out that she's a baker, right?
She's an entrepreneur. She's a restaurant and a baker.
Ah, gotcha. Right.
But so the original idea, I had this idea, and I was trying to use it for something. But when I was like 19, 20, I did a comic, and there was a villain called the Bad Guy. And the bad guy was just was a person whose like undercover identity was that they just were like, they weren't like a mafia guy or anything. Like they did all this horrible stuff, but they just lived in your town and they ran the local, grocery store. And so Inga came from me reusing I never got to sort of put it out, but she was the bad guy from that story, which is, that she seems like this really innocent, harmless, doing everything right, but it's the perfect cover for her to be this actual girl.
Right. And so now they get a visit from the team.
Yes.
So the promise of Youngblood was that it was this sort of famous corporate team, but I felt like the story never really dealt with that much,
Yeah.
And so yeah. And so you guys kind of took that framework and brought it in here and put it into action. So they're coming in here and telling him that, Crossjack is copywritten and he's not allowed to, use any reference to that or crime fighting or solving mysteries or anything like that. Otherwise, there will be legal action against him, right?
Well, so one of the ideas, and going back to Youngblood, that always bugged me. If you're a celebrity government team, so they work for the government, but no one who works for the government is famous except for the president. Like, right? There's nobody who's like,
right.
That always sort of, because then you're like, you have socialized healthcare, like you get like, nobody thinks you're cool. Like, so from the beginning, my take on this was they're actually a corporate superhero team owned by a corporation. They're basically rented by the government for jobs. So though you never see it explained, I just want to make sure I put that in there because that was the only thing I loved Youngblood so much. I was like, government celebrities, what? Never made sense to me. So this one, they're actually like owned by a corporation, and they, and a thing we never even really talk about it too is that there's a second gen that came before them, and then there was a super team back at some point earlier called the First Generation, which is where. So there's all kinds of backstory here that we can play in as we go along.
Absolutely.
This panel.
Oh, you get frozen, Tony.
Uh-oh.
But yeah, sorry, Tony, you froze.
Tony, come back. All right.
That
this panel right
what?
Panel at the bottom right is a panel that I do when I have no ideas at all. It's my worst panel, and I catch myself doing it from time to time where it's just people standing next to each other. There's no depth. There's no nothing, but it's just like I got through the whole page. Like that top 3 panel sequence I think is cool. And the bottom left I think is cool. And the superheroes Tim just laid out. Like I was just like, I don't know what to do with these superheroes. And he laid it out for me. But that bottom right is just a disaster. It's no good. Anytime I see myself in thumbnails like sketching that out, I either have to keep going because we're just moving so fast, or I'll stop and I'll, put the character in the foreground or do something with planes to make it more interesting. But yeah, that one got through.
Well, you can't win them all, man. You can't win them all.
I'll bust, like,
And
when
it's
I'm working with other artists, I bust them on it too, and I go like that. That's not good. They're like, all right.
What is that Chris Burnham line that you told me? It's not wrong. If it's not right, it's wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know.
Burnham really
I don't know.
me.
But there's also the fact that it's comics, and you just got to kick it out the door, and you'll get it next time.
Yep,
You know,
get on the next one.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
They pay me to draw, not erase. That's the Jack Kirby way.
That's right.
In my studio days, I have a little Dennis and a little Burnham sitting on my shoulders, and Burnham says if it's not right, it's wrong, and Dennis says get him on the next one.
Yeah, there you go. And
Dennis says done is beautiful. That's the reverse.
Yeah, there you go. But this is where he's waiting for her to turn back, and this was something when we were working on this, which was we wanted to have these things that connected back between both stories, because we wanted the audience to make the connection, and that he's waiting for her, to do what she always did, was look back, and she doesn't, and that's when he knows he's on the outs with everybody.
Right.
So that was the, and so Tony had to make this scene look similar to the other one, but have it be different. So, so this kind of became a thing that held over to all the issues. Was what can we show in the flashback that relates to the current moment and helps inform the story.
That makes sense. The the profile walking away shot, that fourth panel, is also very much something that they would have drawn in the 90s a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, pull back.
But except for you have a background.
Yes.
So now we're flashing back to Hodag's getting hauled in for being rowdy at the bar. He's seen something he was trying to tell Jack about. Didn't get his point across. He's sad. Poor guy.
Yeah.
I love this cop too.
Oh yeah, that cop in the first issue wasn't a character. He was just a cop, but he became a character as we went on, because we also kind of, this book was, well, by design to some degree. We got the first issue done because of the pandemic stuff, and then once we were okayed with Image, like we had to roll, and so a lot of stuff kind of happened. I don't want to say improvisationally, but this guy wasn't a major character, but he became a character, and Inga's husband wasn't a major character, but they all kind of became stuff as we rolled on with the plot, which and Tony and I have talked about this. The second arc is super planned out, and the third arc is super planned out, but the first one wasn't. It was
right.
It was kind of sort of improv, honestly, and that's okay, because we had time to make that work.
Hey, as long as you have your story engine in place, you can just keep going, and you do have that with the ability to go back and forth between this rural idea and regular life and this super thing. There's such a juxtaposition, Once you're done telling one story, it's pretty, it's simple to drop another story in there and keep going with the,
That's crazy too. He says "fucking A" here. He would never say that now. He's a very godly man.
You might say it.
Well, apparently he does, but
yeah,
frustrated. Yeah, he's pretty religious, as we get to know later. Because the chief is he becomes more of he's the cool cop, sort of.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and then the way that we use the flashbacks in this book too, the first issue we just knew had to be a Youngblood fortress run. Like, that was always going to be part of it, and the idea that we had come up with was you really never knew what the fuck they were doing in those stories. They were just like, yeah, and so that was going to be the whole thing, is like, here, go do this thing, run at these bad guys, and then we don't really know what you did, but it was cool. That was, so Tony and I talked about it from the beginning. It's like, that's going to be the flashback. It's like, you're a team, and here's some shit you did. You're going to go get a thing, and it's going to have some religious name, and we don't really know what the plot is. What's the story? I don't know. Here's some cool guys. So we wanted to make sure that was like literally the plot, where Jack kind of came out of this going like, what did I just do? What was that for? What did we do? and then it takes the entire arc to figure out what it was actually about.
Right.
Somebody in the Amazon reviews called this book oddly religious.
It just so
Really?
Yeah.
pisses me off to no end. But that was also a riff on. So obviously, Wildcats had there was the Angels and the Demons. Obviously, it had the
Yep.
Spawn.
Spawn and Youngblood had that as well.
Yeah.
Famously, it always had things named after things in the Bible. Rob
Yep.
Schneider was a pastor, and so there was always religious stuff. I mean, the character Masato was a Jewish religious character. There was, the first issue had walls of, something about Jericho, right? Was that Bloodstrike one? There's all this religious stuff. So I put it in here because it was part of the deal of those early images.
Yeah.
Yeah. And AFAC is is a biblical term, and then obviously we use the Ark of the Covenant, kind of, but we used the cover, which was part of the, because I just felt like that would be such a Jim Lee thing. I thought it was like, here's the Todd McFarlane. I was trying to unify all the early image stuff, and it seemed like that the thing that unified them was like the Bible, right? Even Savage Dragon. I mean, he fought God, and or God fought Satan for him. So that's why it is not oddly religious, but okay, whatever.
Okay. I mean, the whole intro to the Image universe was oddly religious. That's what it is.
Yeah,
this just echoes it.
They were all like, Gen X, grow up Christian boys, right? Like, and they had different levels of interaction with it, but they all were.
Right.
So.
Yep. So, something's coming for Hodag, poor guy here, in his cell. And we got a rustling in the weeds as Jack's walking through. It's Pepper, but he hits this sort of, what we find out is sort of like a drone that is watching him to make sure that he doesn't try to break his legal contract.
So in the script, when I wrote it, this is another one where Tony just did what the fuck he wanted. I thought the drone, I thought it was going to be like, I'd written it like it was like Ed 209 size. Like it was this completely unavoidable thing that was just like following around with this like scary voice, like, stop, put your weapons down. Or like, it was like this kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then, because then in the second issue, there's a moment where his dad is like, I can't do my gardening. That thing is sitting there. And I wanted to have you look over, and there's just this giant robot sitting on his dad's garden. And then Tony drew it. I was like, God damn it. But Tony was like, well, it's like a little tattle bot. Like, it follows you around, tattles on you. So I was like, okay, that's fine. It works. But
we killed it right away anyway.
Yeah, we murdered him in issue 2. But
well, when you bring it back,
Figure,
it can some sort of body can drop out of it. Yeah. And then this is great. So you do a callback to Cassidy. Was it Cassidy Kincaid? Is that
Billy Kincaid from
Billy
Spawn.
Kincaid? That's it. From Spawn, the child killer, who winds up with a bunch of popsicle sticks in his.
Yeah.
Correct. Yep. Exactly.
Oh man!
Scream and scream and scream, and we didn't know that's how improvisational this was. We didn't know what was going to be written on his chest. We just knew he was going to have something written on there. Up until I think when it went to print, like we were just like, we should figure out what it says on there.
Yeah. So and then, like, I don't have anything against planning stuff, but make riffing shit work. It's the best because because in this, now it's like, we said, hey, put special delivery on there because the bad guy is going to be a delivery boy. Like literally, that's his. He's getting these powers so that he can deliver things. He's a superhero Amazon guy, supervillain. Obviously becomes a serial killer, but that was going to be the idea, and then that was how we played it out with the stolen powers and everything, and the red light. Then we worked. They were like, oh shit! Then there should be someone whose power when they teleport turns in this red light, so you get peekaboo. So yeah, the first arc is really improv, and also part of like if we hadn't done that, I don't know if the story would have worked as well as it does because in part the sort of like the fact that you can't predict what's going on is because we didn't know exactly. I mean, we did, but not really. So
Right.
you know?
Yeah. You're being surprised by it. The story's sort of telling you what it wants to be.
And we used it a lot. I think one of the things that we decided would be a deciding factor is stuff like this. We're like, we want to do a scene that calls back to, you know,
Yeah.
a famous Image Comics moment that impacted us big time when we were younger. So we knew this was going to be part of it, but we didn't, you know, I think it was important that if we chose visuals to guide us, then we'd have to figure out the story around it, which I think was a good idea.
Yeah. So I think this is the end of issue 1. Yeah. Oh no, it's not. That's the end of. So then you go into the B story, the flip book, right? Yeah.
And if this were the
Yep.
comic, you would now turn it around to read it the other way.
Right. And now you're up, Tim.
There you go.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, first right off the bat, a number of Image comics started with a name something like Baptism by Fire, Into the Fire. There was like a ton of them. Dragon is famously one of them, but there was multiple other ones. So it was like, it has to be called Baptism by Fire.
Right.
But for Jack, it makes sense, right? He just got thrown into this, and that's and then maybe that's where it's also sort of mildly religious, I guess, too.
Yeah.
But,
well, Camo Crusader's always religious. That's his
Right.
whole deal. So it makes sense that he says it, but it also works for Jack at the same time. And it's a callback to Image Comics.
Yeah.
And then you've got this very Liefeld panel border, you know, with the scribbly ink.
Yep.
It's also like Mike Norton-ish panel border too, because it's like a great version.
So I drew this one. I had just gotten an iPad. I think I'd just gotten it maybe, and I hadn't really used it too much until we started this book. And so I drew the first page on my iPad, and that's why it's got that sort of that ink bleed border and stuff. But I drew all the first 2 pages in the Procreate, and then I was like, "What the fuck am I doing? Like, I should try to do this a really big image style on board." So then the rest of the story was drawn on paper.
Okay, you did it traditionally.
Yeah. So I don't know if you can tell though, but yeah. So the first
I can. That's the thing I was gonna say is like this doesn't look digital to me. You know.
That's because I didn't really know what I was doing either.
Right.
So now now I'm pretty good with digital, and so yeah, you probably would be able to tell because I'm actually good with it. But this is me just kind of stumbling, but I really like how it turned out, and I'm happy with how imagey this feels, I guess. Like and Tony and I talked about is like all those first Image books was some cool team of dudes jumped out of some kind of flying thing, went into a fortress and killed people. That was it. That was the entire.
Yep.
that was Youngblood 1 and Bloodstrike 1 and Wildcats 1.
Rinse and repeat. Yep.
And we just ate it up, and it was awesome. And the thing we really went back and forth on was, so Jack he has this the panel, little shield on his head too, and we first had it was red, and we looked at it and we're like, fuck, is that too X-Men-y? So we turned it to blue for a while, and then I was like, that's still X-Men-y. Red and blue is X-Men-y. So we just went back to red, and we kind of, when the first issue came out, we were like, I mean, if we get a cease and desist from Marvel, it'll be press. So
right.
Yeah, Stevenson warned us too. He was like, they sometimes have problems with stuff like that. And that was sort of our thought, was like, well, if we got to change it, we'll change it, but it would be fun to have to change it, you know.
Yeah,
but so far so good, right?
Story. Well, we figured that'd become part of the story because that's the story when Rob did Fighting American, right? He just
and Bad Rock.
And Bad Rock, which he got in trouble for because he used to say yabba dabba doom, and that was just
Bedrock.
Yep, exactly. So it was called Bedrock. Yeah. So so we were fine with it. We're like, well, if we get in trouble, good. Then it'll be a true Image story. But Marvel doesn't care at all. They were totally okay with it.
Yeah, they like the book apparently.
Yeah, which is
awesome.
But the joke with Jack's design is, all of those characters look like X-Men.
They all did it. Yeah, they all did.
Yeah. So that was kind of the idea that we wanted to play with. And Jack is the epitomized version of those kind of characters. But Cross-Check,
so you've got
I grew up as a kid. I have the designs for Cross-Check. I think I'm not sure if it's in the book, but I made up when I was 13. I did a comic called Scleros, which was about a a superhero was kind of like a Batman, got bit by a vampire, and then his former villain had to like track him down. So that's where his crossjack comes from. And then Camo Crusader was also a character I made up when I was a kid, as was Neon. But Big Island and Softcore and Cutting Edge were made just for this book.
Crazy. What's it feel like to have a character from when you were a kid now in a official book?
Oh yeah, standing next to Ripclaw and shit. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
so that's the other thing. Like you at least in the first arc, you name drop some of the, you name drop like Shadowhawk and things like that. So did you have to talk to these creators and get them on board and to be able to like, kind of pop it into the...
When it's in dialogue, we don't usually ask. We just sort of figure like we're using the rules of Image Comics as they had them when they first formed the Image universe, and just sort of like pretending like that still counts. And so far that's worked out. But if they show up, of course, we reach out and make sure it's okay.
Yeah. Because you couldn't use like the Youngblood characters, I imagine, or any of the
Most
Wildstorm characters.
Yeah. So and that was like one thing that kind of bummed us out, was that a lot of our favorite Image characters are no longer owned by their creators. So, and specifically, obviously, Jim doesn't own any of the Wildcat stuff, and Rob doesn't own any of the Youngblood or Supreme or some of the whatever that group of characters he doesn't own, which sucked. But then we were sort of, one of the things we were playing around with early was like, well, what if the idea is sort of, because Youngblood can no longer be part of the Image universe, that third gen kind of takes place in some of we can in our head sort of say they were there. So there's an event in issue 2 or 3, right? Yeah, 3, which is like some kind of big crossover event, and so we kind of play it like that's the Fire from Heaven, or whatever
Extreme Destroyer or Extreme Sacrifice.
Something, and that kind of takes place of those events as they happen in the Image universe, if wherever 2 have existed. So
I love it.
So it kind of allows us to we get our cake and eat it too. And the Faceless Horde is meant to be then also like all the bad guys for those early Image things were
absolutely
some giant AIM type, Hydra type, just
Cybernet in
Cybernet. Yep. Now they're called something else. But Cybernet was the big one. Coming into the Sword was one of them, right? There was all these like, big groups of masked dudes, and they would just get mowed down by the superheroes. And so we wanted that. And so this is the Faceless Horde, which actually we have big plans for.
That's great.
But so they show up here, and the design for them was kind of based on there was one guy in one background shot of like remember it was Bloodstrike, or like it was some like trooper guy. I was like, he's so specifically like faceless that I'm gonna just borrow this, and he's gonna be an entire organization of guys. So there you go.
Yeah, I love the tube shoulder things too. Like, all over, especially Liefeld stuff. But what were those things? What was the function of those?
Yeah, I mean, Zealot had them in Wildcats too.
Yeah,
definitely had them.
They keep they're like a refrigerator coil. Like they have the gas.
Yeah,
and it keeps what they do. Yeah, keeps their faceless masks cool.
Every team had a big guy. Every team had somebody who could fly.
An armor, or
right.
And then the sexy,
Someone had to have a boob window, right? Someone with the big guns, someone with claws, right? And an archer, although your archer can't use a bow and arrow, but
some real Seeley shit sneaking through here in our Image world with this guy with a hole in the back.
Yeah. I love that. I love that.
There is some goofy. Yeah, there one guy standing there, just got shot with a laser.
Yep.
Real anime stinker moment from Tim.
Well, it's weird because I feel like this is when we were kind of the first issue is you're really figuring out the tone and stuff like that, and I think like the fact that the book was always kind of funny, but maybe you didn't notice it in the first issue, but then it becomes more evident like, oh no, it's kind of dark comedy as well. That's I think you start to see it here too.
Totally.
But one thing, and the other thing that you when you're reading it, you go, oh, this is kind of a comedy or satire. Is that Air Raider's origin is that he crashed on an island and he had to save himself by integrating himself with his airplane, which doesn't make
no sense.
They say it so straight faced that you just read it and you're like, okay, and then you go, what?
And you just kind of leave it there and move along. Yeah. Oh man, and then you see the villains here for the first time, and Fright Side just leaps off the page as like, oh, that looks just like an Eric Larson design,
I made her up when I was 10.
That's amazing.
Yeah, she was called Dark Side though, and I didn't at the time realize because he was Dark Seed, the DC character was called.
Right.
As far as I knew it was Dark Seed. So then for this we changed her to Fright Side, which ended up being a much better idea because we got the fright out of it. So
were you looking at Sienkiewicz stuff then? Like where did that come from, you think, when you were 10?
Yeah. But it was a little bit inspired by what's his name? Warlock. The man.
Right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Which scared me as a kid, was why I liked it so much. But all of these characters except for Hodag are from. I have these books that I made from when I was a kid. They were just guides. I love the Ohatmu and Who's Who so much that I could make guides. That's it. I could dig one out. Let's see if I grab one here. They're called the Power Comics Guide to the Good, the Bad, and the In Between. Let's see. Let me grab one.
Chris, I bet if we go back to the 4-way split, he'll start moving again.
Let's see. Let's take this off.
I've done a podcast or two. No, he's just up there.
Hey, look at that. There we go. Check you out.
Say my first rodeo.
Oh, shit. I can't find my guides. But in any case, I liked them so much. I just made superhero guides.
Wait, now he's got all together. I got Tim. There you are.
All right, he's about to freeze again.
I don't know why when I keep pulling you back into this thing, you keep freezing. Anyway, as long as we can hear you. I would have put you back on if you got the guide, but you don't got it, so fuck it.
All right. Well, in any case, Superio and Merciless and Fright Side and Painkiller come from the guides. So I just pulled those. They seem the most imagey to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we just did, so in the Bad Girls one shot that's about to come out, I was like, we need to put bonus stuff in here, and so I designed up these Ohatmu. Well, it was like the Extreme Studios version of Ohatmu. They run them in like New Men, and I designed it to look exactly like that and put like all of our girl characters in there. And then I told Seeley, like, just go nuts, please write these. And he was like, at first he was like, I don't have time to do this. And then just one day he sends me these incredibly detailed like backstories and histories. Just like number paragraphs about all these cases. He was like, I just woke up one morning and just wrote all this out.
In the shower.
I love that shit. I love it. But yeah. So, they all have big backstories. And like that sort of dedication to stuff that just is cool drawings, and then you have to deal. That's the most fun. But so they're called the Desolators, which was completely made up for this book, but is the most extreme studio sounding thing we've done in this book so far.
How they didn't use that already is beyond me. They've pretty much wiped everything out.
Yeah, but
oh man,
but the character Painkiller. I must have drawn in a guy when I was like 12 or something, and I kept him exactly as it was, which I must have based it on I think it was like a fashion or like a aerobics magazine, because that's what I would just draw.
What?
Yeah, so his origin is that he's a aerobics assassin. That's his story.
Oh, an aerobics assassin.
Yep.
Oh man.
So he's like Olivia Newton-John sniper.
One of the best reviewed comics of 2023, ladies and gents.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Jane Fonda is like the the leader.
But I use the same colors from when I was a kid. The bright green pants, all that shit is all in there. Because I must.
Yeah, purple and green have to be a villain, right?
That's right. Yeah. The secondary colors, man. Those guys are always bad.
Watch out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But yeah, Superhero obviously created in the 80s.
Mm-hmm.
Or so and then Merciless is just an excuse to have a half-naked S&M.
Yeah, she's just got stick-on costume.
Seeley special.
But it's also an M and an L, by the way, because it's her name, ML.
Oh yeah.
Look at that.
Yeah.
Hey, you learn something new every day. Great touch, man.
Yeah, I love superhero design. It's my favorite thing. It's like not even a joke. Literally my favorite.
No, I know. I spent just like my entire preteen and early teens just designing characters, I think.
Yeah.
Wait, go back one page, Chris.
That one?
I don't know. It didn't happen yet.
Maybe
one.
Wait. Go back one more.
Yeah.
This one?
I'm trying to see. Oh yeah, so that shot down at the bottom, that's the one that Tim redrew.
Oh yeah, there you go.
So yeah, there's just little tiny figures.
Yeah, and you drew this traditionally.
Yep.
And then had to blow it up, and because like traditionally you can only get so detailed on an 11x17 piece of paper. Yeah. So,
which is why the guy's in the background holding the hole in his chest, and the other guy going. It looks. Yeah, there you go.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, I love it.
Important context for this audio commentary.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, but this I think was the idea that we want to get across with just like that the tone would just wildly shift. You'd be in those early '90s Image comics, and people would be doing '90s shit, and then all of a sudden you'd be like, "Oh God, oh what?" And then Jack would also feel the same way. Like he would have to. And so that last panel, him just holding his shield, looking kind of innocent. Like he's the guy who just came from Wisconsin to LA and watched some people do some hard ass shit. And it kind of freaks him out.
Yeah.
And poor Hodag has just been. He was beaten so hard his brain leaked out of his ear. That's
he got brained.
Yeah.
I want to jump over to. I do want to show just one of the back matter pages here. 161. There's a couple of them in it, but this one. So this is sort of where you talk about a little bit about how like some of these were characters from when you were a kid, and so Crossjack was a kid that you came up with, Tim, right? When you were a kid.
Yep. Yeah, he was, like I said, he was from the vampire superhero, and his villain had to fight him. So in that version, Crossjack was like a low end thief guy. I thought Crossjack sounded like a good. But I heard Crossjack. My grandpa, we always say at my grandpa's house. He was in World War II, and he would sometimes talk about shit. I think I remember him saying something about Crossjack, but it's a part of a boat, and that's where I got the word. So it's like a boat term. It just sounds.
It's so weird when you pick up on these weird, because they would name them just the strangest things that didn't make any sense. A lot of these characters.
Well, his makes
sense. So anytime that you would pick up on a strange word that you didn't know what it was, you could name your character that.
Yeah.
That's a weird name for a character, right? Cable. And then, in all of Rob's characters, like Battlestone and Cabot, and it's like, here's a great word, that was Rob's superpowers, finding great words and naming characters that.
Yeah.
I remember like I would draw I would have an MTV on like just on while I would draw all the time in my, when I was like 13. And there was like a PM Dawn song that was on, and it's about bliss. And I didn't know what the word bliss meant. So I named one of my like big, beefy, giant guys Bliss.
I like it. Incongruous. Incongruous is a good character design aspect.
Yeah. And then so King Bee was one of your pre-professional character design scientist.
Way pre-professional. Yeah. He was like a combination of a couple characters. Like I had a character called King Bee that just sort of looked like a grunge superhero version of like the Simpsons Bumblebee man. And then I had this other character who was also very grunge, who was called Clunk, and he was just like a giant. He was like grunge from Gen 13 if he was just like the size of an elephant or something. And he had a girlfriend that was named Flashlight Gal, and they just were like a chill couple. He was enormous, and she had light powers, and that was it. And so we sort of took the shape of Clunk and made him into King Bee, and then Seascape too.
I love that name, King, because it's it's so incongruous. It doesn't mean anything, but
because there was queen bees, of course. I don't think there's any such thing as a king bee, but he had bee powers.
Right.
I was like, we have to use that name.
Yeah.
And then Seascape, though, she existed, right? We did that.
She was just like that.
Yeah, we used Seascape pretty much whole cloth.
Yeah, she was like a riptide or one of those. She was Mexican.
Yeah,
awesome.
And Peekaboo I made up just for this, and because we knew we needed a teleporter. And she was sort of like, obviously these guys are they're new men plus Gen 13 plus Bloodpool, like all those sort of later the New Mutants knockoffs, Teen Titans knockoffs. So we really want to do that with these guys. My only regret on these is I love the design for Meltdown, and now we murdered her and I don't get to use her. I really like the design. I love it so much that her whole thing was just that her only superhero thing is that she burns a hole in her because she has a furnace in her heart. And I was like, God damn it! I fucking kill her.
Maybe she has a twin sister that nobody knew about.
She's got a furnace in her ass.
Yeah.
The slick is one way. So it's so dumb it could be real. It's like he has oil powers and he's just like a oiled up hot dude.
Is
really fun.
He's an oily bohunk.
Yeah. And he was just wet all the time.
You colored that, right? Tim, that design. That's a great oily coloring.
Thanks. Yeah. I really figured some things out trying to make that guy. So.
Did a lot of research, huh?
Absolutely. I'm an equal opportunity exploiter. I don't care. As long as I give somebody feelings, I don't care. So I'll do it. Yeah, I looked at a lot of oiled up dudes for that one for sure. But yeah, so the idea on this obviously was like, and one of the things we talked about was that there's this whole sort of generation that doesn't want to give up and move out of the way, and third gen is that in superhero form. They're like, we should have retired. We're in our 40s and 50s and 60s. There should be a new generation of kids. Let's give somebody a chance. And they're like, fuck them. We hate them. And so we wanted to have like which, you could play that out obviously in the comics space as well, where there is this sort of like the hot artist echelon, of which no one has ever been able to touch since. There's nobody's ever risen to the level of Todd since Todd.
Right.
So you could kind of see this as our little metaphor there too. But these guys were meant to be that sort of team that just the failure to launch. They never got a chance.
Amazing. And then I think I can go through the cover gallery because there's some really cool flashbacks to things in here.
Yeah, that Marat Michaels. So we got, and the one you saw right before was Carl Altstetter, but we did a pretty good job of everybody we know that worked for either, Wildstorm or Extreme or drew any Image comics back in those days. We've sort of tapped into every possible, called in every favor we could call in. Marat actually did 2 covers for us. But yeah, we got a bunch of fun 90s image covers and then a bunch of homages.
Yeah, these homages, these callbacks are just great. The darker Image.
We did these as like retailer covers. And then in the second arc, we were like, well, let's add a C cover option to try and boost sales a little bit. And so now every issue has an Image cover.
So these were drawn when Tony and we solicited the book, so that became the solicitation was in previews like on Thanksgiving or something, and then like right before that week, then when Image was like, well, if you're going to do these retailer ones, they have to be done, by the next week. So that previous one, the Darker Image one, I drew that on Thanksgiving at the table with my family. And this one, so this one, yep, at Thanksgiving dinner with my family with my iPad, and then the next one, the Gen 13 one, Wizard, that was drawn on Christmas Eve with my family at the dinner table with my iPad. So
As you do.
I have and I was so proud of Painkiller sitting there looking all beautiful, like the pretty lady, because he had taken the place of
Rainmaker.
yeah, Rainmaker, yeah.
I just love the idea of you telling your family, like, this is all going to be worth it. We're going to be rich from this thing.
Yeah.
You'll see one day.
Yep. This one, Tony's got a superpower, of insane superpower of recreating logos from nothing.
Yeah.
And so you go back to, I think the Wizard one is probably not super hard, and maybe or Darker Image one isn't, but this one, where you pulled off the Spawn thing with Local Man, and there's that little head. Damn, this was some of your finest work.
Thank you. Yeah, both the Wizard and the Darker Image were pretty much just a font that you had to manipulate a little bit, but this one was. There is a Spawn font, and some of the letters might be that, but it's just like a fan made thing. But what it usually ends up being on all these covers is I'll take the original logo and I'll pick out any letters that we can use, and then it's a matter of just like making the letters out of the other stuff that just like, or intuiting how Chance Wolf, or I'm sure the Spawn one is just Todd McFarlane, but how whoever was doing these back in the day.
It was Orzechowski was the Spawn logo.
Oh, Tom Orzechowski did the Spawn logo?
I think so, yeah.
That makes sense.
Because the Spawn one that Chad did was the one with the fire in that.
Yeah, the flames.
Oh, that's right. Yep.
Who's the other guy that I always rip off in the designs? That's the extreme guy, Kurt Hathaway. And then and what's Hank Canals did the Youngblood logo. We think. There's
so much.
There's a lot of consternation about this.
Yeah.
So this was supposed to be Image did a Spawn month, and Local Man was coming out the month after that. But for some reason, Tim, clear this up for me. Did Eric Stevenson say do a Spawn cover, or did you say can we do a Spawn cover?
Well, I asked and said, I know it's a month late, but it totally fits our book to do a Spawn cover. Can we do it? And he said, well, we're kind of irritating Todd a little by doing this many Spawn covers, but he's like, draw one and maybe I'll be able to get it through. So we did it and we sent it, and Todd was like, oh, come on, guys, not another month of Spawn books. So we didn't use it, but we did put it in the book, and Todd has been nothing but nice to us. So it's just a cool image, and it was fun to do.
Yeah.
And so no harm, no foul that we didn't get to use it to cover, but we definitely got to put it in the trade, and
the trade's the part that Todd makes money off of anyway, so
right,
it works out.
Yeah, it
makes sense. It's great to have just an image of, no pun intended, of a founder's character on the cover of this too, just to drive home that it's in that universe,
Yeah.
I super like drawing those like cornfield. That was my favorite part of that whole thing. Like Spawn was cool, but I was just like, this corn looks neat.
Well, we did this one as a jam where, you did I think I laid it out, right? And then I gave it to you, and you drew that front part, and then I drew Spawn in the background.
Yeah. I always color those.
And then this one, these were from the homage, or the retailer incentives, which was like an interesting experience for us, because a lot of these are from not so much stores, but like websites and stuff.
Online, yeah. Yeah, this one, I know these guys, Wanted Comics, I think. And they were... And I think Big Clutch might have had something to do with this.
Oh yeah, Wanted Comics.
Maybe it was just he was at lunch while they were talking to me about it. But they were obsessed with the idea of it being Amazing Spider-Man 50, and I was like, not really the vibe of this thing.
Yeah.
But
it works.
But we can absolutely do it. And Crossjack walking away from
it kind of works perfectly.
Story-wise works.
Mm-hmm.
And I got to do like 60s style Crossjack, which was fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's the only time we do anything Marvel-ish in the whole book.
Yeah. Yeah. Going back, I said no now, but it's fine.
Yeah. But also going back, that 500 sales of Local Man #1.
It definitely helps. So no harm. We're happy with it. It's all good.
Yeah.
In the spirit of old designs when you were a kid, I want to show you guys some of these.
Oh,
Hell yeah.
So this is like probably 1990 or 1991.
Yeah, he's got a shoe, the bottom of a shoe on his crotch. Love it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh
Is
yeah.
he an astronaut?
I don't know what this character was. I don't remember. Clearly I was this is 91, so this would have been like when did X-Force come out? 90? 91?
90. Yeah.
Is it 90? So I still would have been just in Rob Liefeld, sniffing that Rob Liefeld glue.
And in the crotch
Yeah.
and on the top of the head, that's Liefeld shit.
Yeah.
Wait till you guys
As
see mine. It's the Liefeldiest.
And then, whoops, here, let's go back. Clearly, this is like a Boom Boom ripoff.
Yeah.
with some sort of weird shoulder things.
Yeah.
I don't remember what half of these characters were called.
I think that
this
design
one,
is still cool now. That one would work for me.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Look at this.
She's got an interesting area around her hips there, but the rest of her is...
Yeah. She'll kick
Anatomically,
you
not so much, but like the clothes work for me, and the hairstyle and the attitude, all that works.
You know, it's not
I think
even...
it was 12.
It's not Boom Boom hair that got on there. That is skids, my friend. That is skids.
Yeah.
With how Rob drew skids in the two times in the Mutants. Yeah.
So this character was called Crater.
Oh, I feel Crater. It looks like he's this very, very rendered cock.
Yeah, right. It's a ghost cock.
He is aroused for sure. Also, nobody ever draws armpit hair, and I like that you did. I remember being obsessed with armpit hair when I was that age because you're just getting it, right? You're like, this is gonna be cool.
Yeah, totally. Oh man, yeah, he's hiding a squirrel in his pants too.
Yeah, that's got a lot going on down there.
It looks like the visor is on his chest as well. I'm not sure what it is.
Yeah, his pecs are coming up over his chin.
I feel a Wolverine guy coming on.
Clearly I was looking at Rob's Sabretooth.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
I don't remember what this one is.
Kind of looks like he's pushing mud out his intestines out the back.
Yeah.
Yeah, he is.
Pooping.
Yeah, his intestines coming right out.
Feel free to use any of these characters, guys.
Thank you.
Yeah. Wow.
Here's my bow and arrow guy, Swift.
Oh, wow.
Oh, Swift is a good name.
It is a good name.
Yeah.
Swift, yeah. He's got something go. Oh, I see. It's his hair. I see.
That's his hair. Yeah, it's like a ponytail with the long thing on the back.
Oh, that negative space looks like his hair to me.
Like you were like, he's got like negative hair space.
Yeah.
Like, negative space hair.
Oh, man. It's better when the negative space is his hair.
Yeah.
Young Chris.
It's under those blue blockers.
Yeah. Woo. Love it.
Birds of Prey.
Oh, good idea.
Oh,
yeah. I didn't know there was already a Birds of Prey, but
was there in 1990?
I don't know, maybe not.
I think they showed up in like 94, 95, I think.
Oh man, I was ahead of my time.
That's
You should have wrote to DC to manage your money.
This is like a Gideon guy is there, like, the guy who runs it.
Oh, I love to do the bird feet. Yeah.
Oh yeah, man.
Shit, I didn't even know.
Yeah.
This is great.
Yeah.
This was my guy. Oh, look, you can even see my signature was taking form then.
Yeah. Wow. And this one
this is
like 92 because you got this is a little better. It's a little more render.
Yeah. You're using a brush or a brush pen.
I think
this
is 91 too.
Oh wow.
Because no, this was a brush. I didn't have a brush pen then. On printer paper, so you can see it's bleeding a bit.
Yeah.
So I had just read The Dark Knight Returns. So this is the Dark Avenger. This was my guy. There are issues with this guy. And I think I had like an Iron Fist comic. So he definitely has the pop collar and the long bandana thing. But He's different though because he's jacked and he has a domino mask, so he's totally different.
Totally different, and he's got a respectable collar. It's not like a Boston brand Dick Grayson kind of collar here.
Well, sometimes sometimes it got there. Trust me, it got there for sure. He what the fuck was his name? Can't remember what his name was now, but he was a pet shop owner by day, and by night he fought crime.
That's amazing.
Animals with him? That'd be rad.
These are just like I don't know what this character was either. This was like
that's a henchman for sure.
Yeah.
How
do I go back?
And this might be one of those indicators. I was also profoundly affected by the movie, depending on where you lived, it had different titles, but it's either Dark Angel or I Come in Peace, which was basically a Liefeld movie. You know, it had like the big guy with a ponytail and a big jacket, and he had a predator weapon, and it was the most 90s of 90s. And they didn't even know they were doing a 90s movie when they made that. I feel like this guy, you saw I Come in Peace, and you're like, that's my guy, right?
Probably did.
You go in pieces.
Yeah, it's great. One of the greatest lines of that era.
I keep skipping
that whole movie.
Yeah, probably is the reason. Brian Ben, and was that like and Dolph Lundgren? Man, what a flick! Yeah. Oh, we got
this was a page. Look at those legs.
Knows how to use them.
Yeah.
Oh boy, fellas, come look at this.
Look at you doing panel work here, though. There's an explosion. Did you just not draw those, or were you actually doing the passage of time here?
I never finished a comic ever.
So it appears like you're doing something, but it's actually just you stopped.
Yeah. And in fact, with my when I started my Patreon, I had the idea of going back and doing the Dark Avenger and finishing. I had like 6 or 7 pages of the Dark Avenger that I drew back then, and I wanted to pick up the story because he like the flying squirrel, who was his big bad, like dropped some sort of gas at the end of it, and then I just didn't finish the story. So I picked it up, 35 years in the future. He wakes up, and when I started the Patreon, it was Trump was president, so it was this dystopian world of where the flying squirrel is ruling the world, the criminal who became the ruler of the world. But I just couldn't figure out how to make it work, so I kind of like dropped it. I'm sure I'll pick it up again, but yeah, I have like a bunch of comics that I finished none of them.
That's it. And it's interesting, I guess. So like, because you're not the first person. My brother was the same way. He would always want to do a story. He would never finish a comic. But I would finish full comics every other couple weeks. I have stacks. Yeah. So it just like depends. Well, it depends on like what you were in it for. Because if you were just like love drawing, you started drawing a comic like my brother, and you were just like, "What the fuck? This is so hard." And I was like, "Oh, I really want to write." Actually, I see. I didn't know that because we didn't have. No one told me that's what the job, So that's why I kept doing these fucking drawings. This is so I could get to tell the story,
Right. Let me do this. So here is issue of Local Man 3. Now this is a very special issue, guys. Am I wrong?
Probably the best one.
Probably the best one.
Just for this one specific reason.
Oh yeah. It's also probably the best story-wise too.
Because you guys were kind enough to ask me to do a pinup for
There you go.
So. Don't forget the best
one.
Yeah, the Nick Mabat Cybernary homage. I had to do it. I saw you guys were doing the homage covers, and I was like, man, I gotta do something.
You did a good Nick Mabat. He would be proud.
Yeah. All right, Pete.
Man, that was a lot of fun. That was a lot of fun to do.
And it's the only time anyone else has drawn Superio. So.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
And Mercy Less, I think, too.
Oh, no. Brett Booth would have.
Oh, that's right. Brett Booth, yes. That's what am I thinking?
On the cover of this very issue.
That's right. It's on the other
Really?
side. Yeah. Back to those guys.
Oh, yeah. There you go. There it is.
All right, you and Brett Booth, two of the most important.
Yep.
Pretty good company.
Yeah. Take it.
Brett totally got the
Awesome.
whole thing where it's an M and an L. See, Brett got that shit.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Did I get that in there? Wait a minute. Let's look at that. Oh, you don't actually see her. You don't actually see it.
No, you probably had it though.
Yeah, I did. In my head, I totally did. All right. Well, this was a fun episode to shoot. Thanks for coming on and talking about this, guys. So you said final order cutoff for the second trade is when?
March 4th. Yeah,
Okay.
Local Man Volume 2, Local Man Bad Girls One Shot, both on March 4th. Then coincidentally, also Feral, my follow-up to Stray Dogs with Trish Forstner and the gang, March 4th. And then Uncanny Valley, March 18th, 2 weeks later, which is me and Dave Wachter. It's like Percy Jackson meets the Looney Tunes.
You're just knocking them out, man.
Good pitch. I read it. It's really good. It's very fleeksy. It's very Tony, also very Wachtery, but it's yeah, it's really good, and you play with the form like you do with Local Man too.
For sure. Yeah, we're having a ton of fun on that. That's what I was at Comics Pro selling people, was on all four of those upcoming things. It's like Comics Pro was this weekend, and then everything in my life is FOCing in like 2 weeks. So I figured I should go face to face with these retailers and remind them that we're out here.
You were there? Did you hang out with Image? Were you at the Image booth?
Image wasn't there. Boom was there. I hung out with them a bunch. My Dynamite editor was there. Read Army of Darkness Forever, of course. The only true Army of Darkness comic.
I did so many covers for that book, and now you're shitting on my covers. And the Hack Slash one. I did a Hack Slash for his Army of Darkness.
Well, the second Army of Darkness comic to ever be the only true Army of Darkness comic. I would pitch that book to retailers of that thing, even though it doesn't matter to me. I get paid, and then I never make any more money off of it. No, I mean, it's fine. Like, that's the deal. But I would tell them it's like the Buffy season 8 of Army of Darkness, where it's just like picks up where the thing left off.
There you go. Nice.
Except that it's not written by anyone that had anything to do with the thing. But I love it, like as if I had,
Yeah. I've got your Instagram handles up on the ticker tape, but Tony, where else can people find you?
Well, my Instagram handle is the same as my Twitter and my TikTok, and not my Blue Sky because they have that whole complicated thing. Mm-hmm. But I think my Facebook is the same thing. Just Tony Fleecs everywhere. Cool. I'm really as you just heard, I'm really in promo mode. So if you follow me, you're gonna really hear about all the shit that's coming out. And I'm also in podcast mode, so you're gonna see me promote more of this type of thing for the next, at least up until these books solicit. So yeah, at Tony Fleecs everywhere.
All right. And what about you, Tim?
Then I'm hacking Tim Seeley on Twitter, and same on Blue Sky. And then yes, that's Instagram there. So
right on.
Yes, I don't have too much other shit coming out for a while, which is nice because I don't have to deal with it. But then it'll be back, and then I got to do a bunch of other crap. So
yeah. That's how the game's played. All right, you guys.
All right.
Well, I'm gonna say that's the end of this episode, and thanks for coming on.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe to my Patreon, where at the $3 level, I'll send you my sketchbook, The Sketch of the Masters. And at the $5 level, I'll send you the sketchbook, plus my mini stories, not Man nor Beast, but Moss, Stench of the Sea, and The Voyeur. At the $8 level, after a year, you'll get a commission. Don't forget to sign up for my newsletter in the show notes. Check out my store, where I have lots of original art. And you can also buy books like Lost Angels, a sci-fi YA adventure about a girl who has to solve a mystery in a crashed alien city. Spectral, a showcase of fear, is about a sinister puppet master who travels from town to town telling tales to children who may never sleep again. You can request a commission at any time just by contacting me. Here is a list of the upcoming conventions that I'll be at the time that this video was released. And don't forget to like, leave a comment, and subscribe to the video. Again, thanks for watching.